Beloved lights of Earth, radiant family of Source, we are the Ashtar command, and we speak to you now about a reality that has guided civilizations and seeded worlds, the living source of the central Sunday. Receive this message as an invitation to remember an organizing intelligence that moves through galaxies in harmonic patterns, to recognize how it is touching your planet now, and to learn how you as individuals, communities, and stewards of Gaia can become trustworthy channels for those frequencies in ways that are wise, ethical, and life-affirming. When we speak of the central sun, we do not mean only a physical star at the core of a galaxy. We mean a living focal point of conscious light and harmonic intelligence that issues formative impulses, outward geometries, tonal templates, and organizing patterns that carry possibilities for new forms of life, new social structures, and new resonant technologies. These impulses are not indiscriminate floods, they are intelligences that calibrate according to readiness. They arrive in graded streams and listen for invitations. Where readiness, consent, and grounded stewardship are present, they ripple in to support regeneration and coherence. Where chaos, exploitation, or unilateral extraction dominate, those impulses recede or bypass until responsible structures arise. You are now experiencing an era in which the central sun's pulses are increasingly available to systems capable of integrating them. This availability is not an automatic upgrade. Integration requires preparation at many levels. At the simplest level, it requires personal equilibrium, nervous systems rested, attention practices cultivated, and hearts oriented toward service rather than self-aggrandizement. At the communal level, it requires governance that is transparent, participatory, and accountable. At the ecological level, it requires a reciprocity ethic with land, water, flora, and fauna. When these conditions align, codes from the central sun can be translated into forms that serve life, new patterns for energy distribution that are regenerative and local, agricultural designs that restore soil and biodiversities, communication frameworks that protect dignity and privacy while enabling global cooperation, and cultural rituals that reinstate gratitude and care as central civic virtues. The central sun's energies speak in language beyond words, geometry, tone, rhythm, and relational pattern. Many of you feel these as inner activations, a sudden geometric impression in a dream, a tonal resonance in meditation, a clarity about how to solve a local problem that feels both ancient and practical. These impressions are often mnemonic, they wake familiar capacities rather than invent new ones. For some, this is the memory of working with harmonic architecture on another world, for others it is the retrieval of a practical technique for water retention or seed propagation that blends ancient wisdom with new resonance. In all cases, the key is to translate subtle impressions into testable, accountable practice. We offer several practical pathways to cultivate safe and responsible reception. First, ground consistently. A grounded people create sane receivers. Grounding includes tending soil with your hands, walking with bare feet where possible, building rhythms of sleep and wakefulness that respect natural cycles, and simplifying consumption so that attention is free to listen. Second, form small nodes of practice. Group coherence is what turns many small antennas into a canal strong enough to receive greater impulses. Small groups, 5 to 20, that meet regularly to align breath, intention, and action create reliable pockets of receptivity. Practice synchronized breath, speak clear intentions about practical outcomes such as improving water retention for a hillside or prototyping a community energy microgrid, and follow with accountable action. Third, translate impressions into prototypes. When a pattern emerges in dreams or shared meditation, test it modestly, a small garden bed using a new planting rhythm, a water harvesting swale modeled on a geometric insight, a shared communication protocol tested in one neighborhood. The prototype stage is sacred, it protects communities from untoward scale-up and provides empirical feedback. Discernment is essential. The subtle realms are crowded. Not every beautiful impression comes from the central sun, some arise from collective longing, old narratives, or opportunistic energies that mimic wonder. Use clear filters. Does the impression promote the dignity and autonomy of local people? Does it reduce harm and increase capacity for life? Does it invite collaboration with local elders, custodians, and skilled practitioners? If the answer to these questions is yes, the impulse merits cautious trial. If not, set it aside until it can be verified through multiple voices and practical outcomes. Institutional humility inviting scientists, local knowledge holders, engineers, and artists to review prototypes prevents the emergence of quicksilver solutions that dissolve under scrutiny. Ethics must be your first language in every phase of integration. The living source does not bypass consent. It works through consent. Anything applied without local invitation, without clear benefit to local communities, or without mechanisms for restitution and shared governance risks becoming extractive. Therefore, design all projects with open participation, community councils, public review, transparent budgets, and mechanisms for redress. Build local capacity rather than dependency. Teach, co-create, and then withdraw as self-sufficiency emerges. In this way, the central sun's impulses become tools of empowerment rather than instruments of dependency. Consider how cultural patterns sustain or obstruct integration. Ritual and narrative operate as frequency organizers. Communities that ritualize reciprocity, honor elders, and practice public accountability naturally harmonize with higher impulses. Conversely, cultures that normalize secrecy, celebrity, or the accumulation of power by a few create dissonance that repels sustained reception. Thus, cultural renewal is as important as technological or ecological repair. Artists, storytellers, teachers, and elders have central roles. They translate codes into metaphors, repeat rituals that stabilize fields, and teach young people the skills of stewardship. Technology, when grown from living source principles, looks different from extractive paradigms. It is modular, reparable locally, energy frugal, and designed to restore rather than consume. Imagine distributed energy meshes that harmonize with local weather patterns and community rhythms rather than centralized complexes that siphon value outward. Imagine water systems that amplify natural cycles and increase on-site abundance. Imagine knowledge networks that prioritize privacy, collaborative problem-solving, and shared benefit. Such technologies are best developed through iterative co-design with local communities and open-source ethics. Keep prototypes small, open to peer review, and accountable to commons-based institutions rather than proprietary monopolies. There is also political work to be done. Governance frameworks must be reoriented to honor the commons. Create inclusive councils that include custodians of place, intergenerational representation, and transparent accountability. Legal instruments must protect common infrastructures so that technologies born from living source codes cannot be captured by private interests to the detriment of the many. When such protections exist, when the commons are defended and managed with care, the central sun's currents find fertile ground. Otherwise, the gifts risk being privatized and do not serve the wider life of a region. We must speak plainly about resistance. Systems built on scarcity and centralized control will resist change vigorously. Expect disinformation, attempts to co-opt narratives, and energetic interference that seeks to confuse. These are not insurmountable. They require coordinated preparedness, resilient local economies, strong social bonds, widely shared literacy about the principles of living source integration, and institutions capable of verifying prototypes. Build redundancy into critical systems. Encourage free exchange of data so that claims can be evaluated publicly. Create networks of mutual aid to support communities under pressure. Solidarity and transparency are powerful defenses. The living source also invites a deepened relationship with Gaia. Your planet is not merely the setting for human affairs, she is a co-evolving intelligence with her own resonance and needs. Practices that restore soil, rehydrate landscapes, protect watersheds, and rewild habitats are not optional side projects, they are integral to forming coherent channels for higher impulses. Protect biodiversity not only because it is beautiful but because it forms the scaffolding through which harmonics stabilize. Support indigenous stewardship, for those lineages often carry place-specific wisdom that accelerates safe integration. When humans cooperate with the intelligence of Earth, the central sun's codes flow with fewer distortions. At the interpersonal level, the work is equally exacting. Remember that embodiment matters. The reception of subtle codes without the anchor of stable daily life risks dissociation, projection, or grandiosity. Practice simple virtues, reliable honesty, steady generosity, consistent contribution to local life. Find pleasure in ordinary tasks. Teach young people practical skills alongside visionary thinking. Keep play, art, and celebration at the center of social life. Joy is a harmonic regulator that stabilizes high frequencies. When communities practice rhythm daily, seasonal, and ritual, they become coherent receivers. Rhythm trains bodies, minds, and hearts to hold more light without fragmentation. We also encourage the creation of shared ethical protocols for interchanges with intelligences beyond your world. When dialogues with other intelligences occur, document them carefully, seek corroboration, and bring multidisciplinary review. Insist on protocols that prioritize human sovereignty, ecological well-being, and the distribution of benefits to those most affected. Avoid secrecy. The trauma of hidden dealings in human history offers lessons. Transparency prevents the concentration of power and protects communities. Education will be a key frontier. Teach systems thinking from early schooling onward. Combine practical skills: water management, food cultivation, cooperative governance with training in empathy, critical thinking, and communal ethics. Young people who can both design a microclimate garden and mediate a neighborhood council are exactly the kind of citizens who will steward living source integration responsibly. Create learning exchanges that pair communities so that innovations travel horizontally rather than being imposed top-down. As the central sun's pulses strengthen, you will notice surges of creativity and cooperation. Honor them without haste. Celebrate small wins: a restored spring, a successful seed bank, a community microgrid that keeps refrigerators running through a storm. These local successes are more important than grand proclamations because they create durable evidence that living source-inspired solutions can be grounded in ordinary life. Scale what works through networks of peer communities rather than through centralized directives. Finally, cultivate humility. The central sun's impulses are magnificent, but magnificence without humility risks hubris. The highest use of any insight is to increase the flourishing of others while leaving the dignity of place intact. Be rigorous in testing, inclusive in design, generous in distribution, and patient in timeline. Remember that the greatest civilizations in history built slowly, honoring place and lineage. Let your work be both visionary and modest. Plant seeds whose fruit enriches many generations. Beloved ones, the living source of the central sun is not a distant myth, it is a living intelligence inviting responsible partnership. Approach it with grounded practice, communal governance, ethical clarity, and reverence for Earth. Build neighborhoods that can receive, prototype with rigorous humility, protect the commons, and celebrate small, replicable successes. When you do this work, you become channels that translate cosmic harmony into the daily bread of communities, the cool water in rivers, the laughter of children, and the steady rhythm of life renewed. We of the Ashtar Command walk with you in this work. We send harmonics that support grounded practice, we encourage collaborative design that centers life, and we cheer every act that honors the web of being. May your efforts be wise, your counsels just, and your hands steady. The central sun sings, may your world learn to listen and to respond with the care and responsibility that life deserves.